What is up? What is up, guys? Gideon Williams, Auto Trends Podcast. It is great to be back with you today. We have an exciting episode on our fingertips. I can feel it. It is an exciting time to be in parts e-commerce. It is an exciting time to be in our industry. It is an exciting time to be in automotive. We have seen so many changes over the last 2-3 decades, and there's a lot of questions out there on that enterprise manufacturer, that global manufacturer, large enterprise, 500 million plus in sales, a billion and plus, large portfolios. What is the future? How do you take your business from evolving from only B2B, that kind of in the 90s, in the 2000s, 2010s, and how do you take it forward? Technology is starting to push forward in our industry. It's here. It's not going away. And how can you make a successful shift, a successful focus in your organization to capture the technology? It's an exciting episode, folks. We are the Auto Trends Podcast. As always, your co-host, Gideon Williams. Lucas, what is up, my friend? How are you?
Very good, Gideon. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. Having a great week so far. We are just rolling like nobody's business, man. Who would have ever thought our 2023 planning for the Auto Trends Podcast was going to take off like it has? It's been really an unbelievable outpouring of support already, connecting so many dots. That's awesome.
No, I can't believe it either, man. You know, we get so many inquiries, you know, just even through LinkedIn, and you know, these people are asking all the right questions, and just the connections we've been able to make so far between the manufacturers and the WDs and the e-tailers and the retailers, and just seeing them connect is really what's really been tremendous to me. You know, that we talked about in 2023, that was our goal, and that's what we hope to accomplish. I don't think either of us had the expectation that it would have taken off like it has now, but you know, seeing these relationships kind of blossom and deals and transactions and revenues and stuff actually connecting with these groups that we're putting together is phenomenal to see.
Well, it's highly encouraging. You know, I think anytime you do something like we did, launching the Auto Trends and pulling everything together, you're not too sure, right? No. But I know that there's a voice, you know, that's needed in our industry. There's a lack of knowledge, certainly around the technology space, right? I mean, we've been in this industry for quite some time. You know, I've been in it for years, and I've always been blown away the lack of experience. Less than 1% of folks in the industry are really connected to technology and where it's going. Obviously, it's the hot topic. But I'll say this, you know, having Michelle Delclure on, right, from C&H Reman, just giving out the industry facts and knowledge, how I think of Reman versus Rebuild, you know, how I think of that whole process and what they're doing is incredible. We have a phenomenal lineup coming up next week. Tune it, Kip, the CEO of Gamut. I am fired up for that. That's going to be pretty exciting, and we are thrilled to have him on. And it's exciting times, that's for sure.
No, absolutely. He's going to be a great guest, and like you say, with Michelle, just the outpouring, you know, of people, you know, after Michelle, you know, I got a call from a guy today actually, and he's going to be listening to this, so he'll probably have a good chuckle tomorrow. But actually, he's Irish. He's from Ireland, but he was listening to our podcast, and he said, you know, listen, I was listening to your podcast, and I couldn't believe, you know, what I had learned, you know, just from listening to her speak, and he was so amazed. He said she is so knowledgeable in her own space. And just by listening to that podcast, he was blown away. So, and that's so great to hear.
Well, you know, that's what we're doing it for. You know, that's why we got started in all this. We have just such an acute, you know, passion for the industry. And then going ahead into April, we've got Sam Russo to come on, you know, on a part of ACPN, just truly one of our knowledge sources in highs and aces, standardization. Where's heavy duty commercial data going? How is that all working? We have Ibram Mesbah, the CEO of Revolution Parts, the visionary of the industry, from a parts and technology perspective. And it's just awesome to see. And I just want to give a quick reminder to our listeners, our subscribers, folks, we are the voice of the industry. We are here for the industry, but the best way to support us is subscribe. If you want to share some content, great. If you don't, that's okay too. Also, If you've got value and you've got an initiative and you have a vision for the industry that you want to share, reach out to myself, reach out to Lucas. We're pretty easygoing guys, man. And we have no problem spending time with you to carry out your vision in the industry and support your mission. That is why we are here.
Exactly. And it's funny because we're always talking on the technology side of things. And as you know, Gideon, I mean, I'm not the techiest guy in the world. I don't come
Yeah.
from a technology background, but what's really been encouraging to me is that these people are reaching out, and it's still at the end of the day, the human connection that brings these people together. It's me calling you, Gideon, or it's me calling Michelle, or it's Michelle calling somebody. And that first human connection is what it takes. And those two people hit it off. And the next thing the business kind of devolves from there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I like to see. I'm a very much, and this is why we're doing this. I like to connect with people. I love
Yeah.
when they reach out on LinkedIn, I can have a real conversation and not get spammed with 100 different emails or
Yeah, man.
just
Yeah.
sales talk all the time. And, but when you can connect with somebody on a one-on-one, a one-on-one level, it just takes that business to the next level. And I'm so happy to see that we're able to do that as part
Well,
of this podcast as well.
it's a genuine feel, right? I mean, there's always a difference between, just selling you a hunk of shit, right? Or we're
Exactly.
genuinely trying to understand, what your problem is and what your mission is, and that's how some of the greatest partnerships have been formed. That's how some of the greatest business has been created.
Yep.
And I've been in this game for a really long time. Certainly on the parts e-commerce side, from the WD to manufacturers to the technology side. And I'm going to tell you, there's no better time to be in the industry. And if you're a young person, you're a young kid coming out of college, and you're looking for a career path, and you're like, man, I just don't know what I want to do. I'm going to tell you right now, this industry is the best industry in the world. You
Yep.
speak to it; it speaks back to you. You engage it engages back to you, and everyone's just genuinely here to truly be here to work for get the working class back up and running at the end of the day, get the farmer, as Michelle was saying, get the farmer back out, get his machines going, right?
Exactly.
And that's rewarding, that's fulfilling, that like it's just so awesome. It's awesome part of what we do.
And we've both worked, in the C-suites and everywhere in the corporate world. And
Yeah.
the one thing I love about the automotive industry is that typically you get people that are no BS. I can get on the phone with somebody and, curse words are going to come out. But you're just point blank, here's what we've got to offer. We're talking about stuff, and that guy might tell me to go F off, and whatever the case may be. But that's fine. You know what I mean? But you get straight answers. You're dealing, I find, with very direct, very real people that want to get stuff done. And, I've truly enjoyed, working in this industry. And for those reasons, you're dealing with real people at the end of the day, more so, I find.
I agree. My very first week in it, I remember first week in the industry, I had an issue, I think, in my desk, and there was a couple people around me, and I said, oh, something happened. I said, oh shoot. And I remember her name was Susan, and she yells across the room. She goes, no, get in. She goes, we say this real thing around here. And she
Right.
goes, we
Yeah,
say, oh
exactly.
shit. And I said,
Right.
oh, okay.
Exactly.
I was like, oh shit. And then I was like, oh dude, I'm hooked. This is my
Right.
industry, man.
Exactly.
These are my people. I found them.
Exactly.
I'll never forget. I'm trying to remember her last name, but Susan, man, most awesome lady, and a steward of our industry as well. So,
right.
Well, you know what, Lucas, let's get kicked off, man. Everything's about the manufacturer. I think what we've seen is over the years, there's so many like intertwining components to the large enterprise manufacturers, right? They're almost like large boats, right? Making big decisions. It takes a long time. Turn. They're not very nimble. They're not very quick. And I think we're at this weird inception point in our industry with very large, big enterprise manufacturers. Historically they've always been, B2B, right?
Yep.
You're starting to see these questions around technology and how can we leverage our distribution? How can we have like this cutting edge, next level e-commerce experience, grow our brand? And there's a lot of things that we're going to uncover here today, but the focus is of, the state of parts commerce for that enterprise manufacturer. What's holding them back, right?
Yep.
And why? What's holding them back from making decisions? And there's a lot of interesting components that we're going to get into, but I'm ready to dive in and let's see what happens here.
No, absolutely. No, let's do it. Like, and you make it a very good point there. These large manufacturers, they weren't built originally. And when they were built, they were never thinking, wow, in 10, 20, 30 years time, we're going to be a technology company more so than a manufacturing company. All of our stuff is going to be sold through
For sure.
technology. That's just not how they were structured, in the beginning. So now they've
Right.
really got to, in a short period of time, really adapt to kind of how we're seeing things go. And and again, we're going to get into this discussion, but my first impression is who's going to be the leaders? And I mean, I think that's the
100%.
opportunity for them now. Who's going to be the first one to take that leap and do it successfully, and make those mistakes? And I think that's what a lot of them are waiting for is, okay, you try it, and maybe we'll watch 2 or 3 try and fail, and we'll see what they did right, see what they did wrong, and then let's just run the course and avoid the iceberg that they hit, and let's go down a different path.
That is such a valid point. If you look in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, technology really wasn't a big part of their business, right? But I also go back, when you look in automotive versus adjacent verticals or other industries, is your consumer is different, because there's a fitment component, right? When you're younger and you go in, when I was younger, certainly you go into the auto parts store, I don't know what the hell to buy. Is it going to fit my car? Probably not. I have no
Right.
idea. I was young,
Right.
right? So you have to get that specialized knowledge. So when you look at the historical context, sure, in the 90s, manufacturers their R&D, everything was around their products, right? So when everything's around your products, you're typically overlooking technology, or your point solutioning based on your independent need, right? And so, large manufacturers were selling to distributors. Distributors were distributing that part to repair shops and mechanics, and to get that part on the vehicle, so that technician could get the car off the bay and get paid, and they do another one, right? So it became this big B2B soup, right? Manufacturers were only big B2B, and they're large. And then you have the start in the 90s, right? Late 90s, early 2000s, online, right? Amazon started coming out with the books. You had rockauto.com. Rockauto.com started as an eBay seller, right?
Right.
And as it evolved from that now to what we know as rockauto.com, they have a lot of power. Well, they have a lot of power today in terms of technology, because there's been that gap that the manufacturer or the distributor just hasn't had the fortitude or the vision or the guts to make a move or make a decision that says, this is our industry. And that's kind of where you've seen e-tailers begin to pop up. But I'll tell you, there's an interesting data point out there, and I think it's very, very valid. If you look at your e-tailers, your large e-tailers, right? And obviously Rock Auto is not public, so we don't have their financial information. But when you look at your e-tailers in general, car parts, Car ID, there's things that when you look at their P&L, Car ID just took a $35 million raise with private equity, right? They kind of bailed them out from a financial perspective. But when you look at that, those e-tailers they're struggling to find growth, because who's fulfilling all their product? The WDs, right?
Yep.
And when you look at margin erosion, you look at profitability, the WDs are not really interested in saying, okay, let's drop margin by 3 points to gain another 10 million or 50 million or 30 million. So everything's become just a margin game. But when you look at your mainstream retailers, your Zone, your Napa, Genuine Parts Company, and that's a good example as well, they're seeing growth, right? But they also have distribution. They have white labeling of products. They have control mechanisms that are telling us, guys, the average age of the vehicle is growing, right? Consumers are making choices based on the money in their pocket, where they are going to go to repair their vehicle, right? Versus, an e-tailer that say price could be potentially higher and they're having some issues. So I think those are some really important indicators of, I think, why as an enterprise manufacturer, you should be thinking much ahead of this, right?
That's right.
You should be looking to the future to gain control, gain your consumer data, right? Acquire that, but then leverage your distribution that you're already doing business with and route that volume into your WDs. completely resolves channel conflict. And I think that we're in that state today, and it's just a matter of who's going to get it right and who's going to get it wrong. And then to be determined, I would say.
No, absolutely. No, I think you're right. And I think the big question is it something that those manufacturers, especially the large ones, do in-house? Is it something that they should say, okay, right, now we need to get developers. Now we need computer science guys. We need all these university graduates. We need, to hire this big tech team. And this is something we're going to tackle in-house. Or is this something that they should be saying, hey, look, we aren't a technology company. We don't have the in-house expertise. We don't have the management to be, to be an IT company. Is this something we should look at outsourcing to a company that's outside, that's already in this space, that has the technological capability of doing this for us, and partnering with a company like that?
That's a really, really good question, and it brings me to a meeting I was in with a very large company, and I won't name the name. And one of their lead engineers made a comment. He said, and we were talking a lot about what we're talking about. And he made the comment and he said, we are a product company. We are a manufacturing company. We're not a tech company. So when you look at the budgets and you look at the tech budgets, everything goes into R&D to make better products. It very rarely goes into technology, right?
Correct.
It can go into technology, but typically it's point solutioning where they're asking, or executive leadership is asking for a return. Show me a return. I'll give you $1 million. Show me a return. Correct. Oh, we can't articulate the return because we're just going to build out some little thing and we don't know how it's going to impact the business. Right. So what happens is a great point. Do you build in-house or do you outsource? Okay. I am always have been a fan and a fanboy or whatever you want to call it on specialization. Specialization moves the needle, right? Yep. So when you bring a team of 20 technologists, new graduates, smart people, you're paying big payrolls for one, right? So when you look at building in-house, payroll is the first piece, right? Multi-millions of dollars in purely payroll. Now let's talk about technology licensing, right? You got to build on a platform somehow, some platform. You got to build on a platform, right? So now you're building it yourself. If you look at specialized technology companies, they have trials and tribulations. Everyone has successes and failures. You learn from those successes and failures to have iterations in your product, to making sure that you are providing what the market wants. So when a large enterprise manufacturer began to build it themselves, there becomes a very high risk of success, right? Right. Not high risk meaning we're not willing to invest the capital, but it's a high risk of success. Are you going to get it right the 100%. First time?
Yep.
You're probably not going to get it right the first time. I'll just be honest.
Chance.
You've seen it. I've seen it so many times. You're probably not going to get it right time. So when you look at these specialized partners, right, a tech platform that is specific on automotive, specific into your parts business, I think Mopar is a great example, man. Mopar in the OE world is leading the way. I mean, they are absolutely leading the way. They've tied their distribution network in. You go to store.mopar.com. You can buy from. They are leading the way. They were very, very forward from that perspective, right? Yep. Now, I think when you look at the enterprise manufacturer, there's a few things that you have to leverage. Leverage specialization, right? If you are the director of e-commerce for a $2.5 billion manufacturer and you're one guy, it's impossible. It's an impossible task to build everything out, make it all work. You need a team of specialization, right? Yep, so when you look at platforms that specialize in it, for one, you're leveraging their talent, you're moving your risk from your P&L to their P&L, right? And then, hey, you got somebody to yell at too, right?
Absolutely.
We need somebody to yell at, right?
Absolutely. No, a previous company I used to have, I hired the best of the best computer science graduates from Carnegie Mellon. I would argue one of the best computer science programs, in the country. And I had the best front end, had the best back end, had the best, computer science students. And again, master's, level, not just, bachelor level, but master's level, the smartest of the smart, and had them in a group. We had teams. They were roughly 4 or 5 on a team. We had a couple teams. But let's say to put all those people again in the room. And if I tried to explain them, say, look, I want to build an automotive platform, e-commerce platform. Now, can they build the platform? No question asked. They can do it with their eyes closed. would they have any clue of how to do it for the automotive industry? They would have zero. I mean, they
Yep.
would look at you and, and say, well, we need guidance. We can build whatever platform you want. We can build the best platform on the planet, no question. But we need to know what do you need in this platform? How does it need to look? How does, but as far as having that knowledge, to find that specialty knowledge like you're talking about
Mhm.
is almost impossible. I mean, so to try and do it in-house, I would say that whoever does try to do it will monumentally fail initially, and it will take a long period of time just to figure that out. If you're merely just going to start from scratch, from zero. I remember a long time ago, actually, this guy asked me when I had my own business, and he said, Lucas, do you use an iPhone? And I said, of course I use an iPhone. And he said, just imagine if 100 years ago, Lucas, I told you, you could be a multi-billionaire. And I'm going to tell you about this thing that's going to come out. It's going to be called the iPhone. And I'll show you the iPhone. And you just build it now 100 years ago, put a team together, and you build it, and you'll be the billionaire. And I said, I could sit there and look at the iPhone. I wouldn't even know where to start to build an iPhone. That's just, and who
That's a
would?
really good point.
You know what I mean? We could put the best engineers on the planet together in the same room, and we could all look at that iPhone and say, where do we even start to build this thing?
It's such a good point. It's such a good point because, and you see this industry, there's nuances, right? There's things that if you're not aware or you weren't in the game or don't have historical context, you're like, I'm not too sure why that happens that way. Right.
That's right.
And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we see a lot of people moving from replatforming, right? That small mid where they can, right? Low risk and nimble. And a large majority of your platforms out there are not specialized. And kind of to your point, you need to have a partner as an enterprise manufacturer, somebody who knows your pain, knows your pain points, also know your vision. But I think the most underutilized component in our industry, if you are a large enterprise manufacturer, is the fact that through digital technology, you're not leveraging your distribution network. I think that there's so many large manufacturers out there that just aren't leveraging their partners, right?
That's right.
And there's some big manufacturers that are starting to fulfill demand online and fulfill it into their facilities, but it's a false hope, honestly, when you begin to do that, because if you think about it, man, you do $2.5 billion a year, you have all these great distribution partners, and you're just going to cut them out by the knees, right? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You want your product touching every single, whether you're DIY, whether you're a technician or a shop owner who owns a couple of bays, whether you're a new car dealer in the service lane, right? You want, as a manufacturer, your products touching all of those nooks and crannies. Well, many of those guys are buying from distribution centers, right? And so I think it's been the number one poorly utilized component in the industry. But then you see e-tailers come in, right? And now, like a rock, right? And here's what kind of boggles my mind is I was it was probably about 8 months ago. I was having a conversation with the CEO of a very large manufacturer company. We were talking about this topic. And I said, I don't know. I said, why don't you guys just leverage your partner, leverage your distribution? You have a ton of distribution. You can flip a couple of switches and find $100 million in new business, right? And he goes, oh, if we do anything like that, Rock will shut us down. And in my mind, I'm blown away, because I'm like, you mean to tell me that you're making that decision based on one e-tailer who started on eBay? That just tells me that our industry has not had the fortitude or the vision to develop forward, right? If it's me and I'm in the seat as an enterprise manufacturer, I'm looking at my distribution, right? And how can I not only get my distribution fulfilling for my demand, right, through a nice direct consumer program, but I also want that distributor to stock 100% of my product, right? It's very, very, very common for distributors only to stock 20 or 30% of your product line, right? A movers based on the VIO, based on the vehicles in their network or in their region that they service, right? And so as an enterprise manufacturer, you really need to begin to think outside of the box, right? And how do you gain all that connectivity into your distribution? Well, you don't do it in-house, unfortunately. You just don't.
That's right.
Right? We see it all the day. You just don't. There's so many integrations to support. Every business and distribution point is different. So you need specialization, right? And we see that all the time. But I think when you look at the historical context of why it's been B2B, WDs are B2B, right? And then the e-tailers came on board, but now we're starting to see faulty P&Ls. We're starting to see negative growth, but we're seeing growth from our retailers, our mainstream zone, NAP, et cetera. These are just macro indicators that the market's growing, right? You just need a better leverage point, and you need to begin to also consumer data. Manufacturers over the years have missed out on consumer data to help their R&D, to help understand actually what the market wants. New products are rolling out. What are faulty? What's are faulty on products? Let's batch test, right? Let's batch test, certain products that are in our wheelhouse and in our categories in which we're manufacturing. So those are just some pieces. There's a much larger opportunity here at play, but we see it all the times. Enterprise, large, big manufacturers are point solutioning, and they're struggling to have a total commerce strategy. That is the number one gap that we are seeing, and it is hands down. And that's going to be changing. That's changing over the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And if I am in the C-suite of an enterprise, large, big manufacturer, I've got my eyes on this 100%, because there's ways you can have a very low cost of investment for a completely high upside. And there's some organizations out there that are changing the game, and it's an exciting time, I think, to be in the industry for sure.
Yeah, and they just need to be agile. I mean, I mean, the large corporations, those guys aren't agile. They're not swift moving. They're very slow moving, and they don't have the agility in those organizations. I mean, how many meetings do we sit in? And it'll go months and months and months. And you'll get, some large organizations that, they'll be talking to us for a year, Gideon, before anything sort of happens. And then we'll get to a meeting where we're actually finally talking to the right people. And then the boat will slowly start to move along. Meanwhile, we get some other organizations with the right CEO at the helm, with the right vice president sitting, right VP of e-commerce, and boom, boom, boom. And we see these things happen in a week. And they're like, let's get this done. Let's get an NDA done. Let's get this signed. Let's get this. And they're, so it really depends who's at the helm, and do they have the authority to, really push it along. And that's who they need driving now, because technology is not waiting for them anymore. This is kind of here now. It's not something you can say, let's wait a year, 2 years, and I will examine it next year. Or, you guys are going to get blown by these smaller organizations.
100% fear, right? Fear of maybe making a wrong decision. I think that's the number one.
Exactly.
Paralyzed, people get paralyzed by fear, right? Fear is such a paralyzing factor in their mind, in their vision, in innovation. You want to be non-innovative. You want to be somebody who's always behind the eight ball. Just put fear in your heart, right? Like, dude, the fear sucks, man. It'll kill your ass.
Exactly.
But you have to have strong strategic conviction and growth. But here, you're completely right. We are going to start to see small, agile, mid manufacturers that are moving quick, that are on the ball, that are seeing 10x return on ad spend. So they're like, holy shit, why haven't we done this before? Right? Because tech is not slowing down. What is it? I recall the law: every 2 years technology doubles, right? And what's happening in an automotive industry is technology's here, right? The OE parts world. I mean, just look at what Mopar's been able to do with their tech stack, right? And look what they've been able to do with how their distribution just comes together. You look at all of these kind of look at the winners, right? Look at the winning formulas, and just kind of follow what they do, right? Follow them. But we need, and that's one of our main missions here, is to continue to educate the industry who maybe haven't had a lot of day-to-day experience with technology and growth, and how do we unpeel the layer of the onion on this. And I know I've said this a couple times. And we need to, I'd love to reach out and get Will on the AutoTrends podcast, but he, the president of Genuine Parts Company, GPC, he said, we and every automotive company will become a technology company.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
insane, right? Like
Yep.
that's like, whoa. He came
Yep.
from an adjacent industry, right? He's
Yep.
not an automotive guy from 1990, right? He's
Right.
not an
Right.
automotive. He came from adjacent industry, but he gets it. He's like, I've
Correct.
seen this happen. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the delay in our automotive sector, right? And I'll get to one more thing that I think that there's a gap buying group. So I'll get to them in a second. But one major gap is we've had manufacturers making decisions from B2B perspective, WDs making decisions from a B2B perspective. Then you have the e-tailer world coming in and just gobbling up the online share. Now everyone's like, oh, well, we're out of luck.
Yep.
Just make decisions that are sound for the future of your business. You can't look back, man.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Anyone
right.
ever rechange a decision? Looking back, impossible.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And like you say, you look at the success stories. And I mean, we're on LinkedIn and stuff like that every day. And you looked at some of the success stories they had, like look at O'Reilly and, these sort of guys. They have a huge presence, with the business to business community and stuff like that on LinkedIn. But you look at what they're doing and they're really connecting with their consumers, with their partners, with, through social media. It shows them, they're having a great time at work, shows some great pictures. Then it'll show them out in the community doing some community work. Then it'll show them donating back. And then every now and again, you might get a post on, some special promotion or product that they have or some launch or something like that. But it's all focused on the consumer. It's all, here's what we're doing. It's a feel good story. Look, you can trust us. Our employees are just like you and I are. And that's what these companies need to be doing. What these manufacturers need to be doing. They're big
100%.
enough. They have the credibility. They've earned the people's trust. So they're in a prime position for it because, we see a lot of e-tailers come and go and you get the fly by night guys that, throw up a website and, aren't actively involved in the business and that sort of thing. But these guys that already have this presence built and have spent years and millions of dollars on their reputation, you're sitting in the driver's seat. Take advantage of that and just build upon that. I think it's very important.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. I think a lot of your large enterprise level manufacturers, they've kind of put some blinders on, right? And obviously they're so head down in in their products and building great products as they've kind of forgot to take a look up, right, and look at technology. And I think that brings up a great question is how do you take action, right? Like if you're a large org and you head up your e-commerce division, how do you take action, right? And I think I had a coach back in the day and he'd always yell at me, but I got past that because but he'd always say, just keep it fucking simple, like keep it simple, stupid kiss, right? The old saying.
Exactly.
And for a lot of years, I never knew what that meant, right? I just always remember he'd yell at me, right? I've been yelled at more than anyone, man. But I'll tell you, it makes you tough, brother. It does.
Sure, it does.
Yep,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
I've had plenty of people nose to nose, man. I thought we were gonna kiss, but
right, yeah.
It wasn't that. He wasn't talking me to take me to dinner,
Right.
And so I think when you look at like these massive undertakings, like, well, how do I do this? I need all these architects. I need an engineer. What platform do I build on? Right. So I think you just take a step back and you look at your current business and you look at what has been laid, right? So you look at what has been laid. What is our distribution? Where is our revenue coming from? Who are our largest partners? And then you work backwards, right? And then you just begin to whiteboard and connect this dot. Okay, we have our experience. This is our catalog. We have our pies and aces, which is ingestible by, plenty of platforms. We have our data standardization. Okay. Once you lay out that bird's eye view, that gives you the empowerment to then go and make small decisions, right? So you lay out the big picture. And I understand it's a daunting task, especially if you're coming in and maybe you don't know a lot about the industry, but you know a lot about e-commerce. Take a step back, point all of your areas. Who's your distribution? What's the experience you want? Okay. This is how we're going to drive growth. This is our goals. This is our budget. And then you just begin to work backwards. And Lucas, you and I, we help these type of deals all the time. That's what we do. And, and as you've always said, if you are in that seat of a parts e-commerce manager, a director, a vice president level, or even a C-suite or a president, you're like, I just want to understand more, right? And I've been in plenty of meetings where the CEO says, I just don't know the online business, right? And that's completely fair. I actually have a lot of respect for that. But it's
and
just
start
starting
slow.
Yeah.
And because we've seen them come in, like we've seen huge organizations come in and with tons of money hasn't been the problem, and says, right, we want the platinum diamond series, we want to do everything all at once, and we want it tomorrow. And we're telling them, don't do that. Start incrementally. Let's start step 1, step 2, step 3. Let's not jump to step 10, and now you have to hire 50 people to handle all this stuff and train everybody. And start slow. Don't go all in, just incrementally, and then, train staff and have them train that staff, and, slowly ease your way into it. Don't feel like you have to go all in or go all out. That's definitely not the method. And anybody that we've seen be highly successful, they've gone the 1, 2, 3 ABC sort of method: slow, steady, and then build.
Well, we had a manufacturer out of Europe, come to us, and they are seeing negative growth in North America. So we started off with, let's get standards, right? Let's set the foundation. So we got data into standardization. Okay, very low risk, very low cost. Okay, next we provision infrastructure. Okay, we provision the infrastructure that you want to build on, right? So now it's like your slab, right? That's the slab which you're going to build your house. Okay, now let's build walls. We build walls, right? Okay, now and over time, okay, what's your distribution look like? Very small. That's okay. Let's start small and let's look to grow it, right? And next thing you know, they have a full-fledged just operation, right? Standards in the data, foundation in what they're doing. Now they're layering in tribal knowledge internally, right? So they're not throwing millions of dollars at this thing. They're throwing very low amount of money at this thing to start out. And over a period of time, you're seeing the growth. You're letting the revenues and the P&L tell you what to do, right?
Correct.
But the most important piece is that you're in the game.
Exactly.
You're in the game. It's
Exactly.
really hard to be out of the game in the technology space and then full bore in.
Yep.
It's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe
100%.
for disappointment. It's a recipe for failure. We see that constantly. So you've got to think of it as a swimming pool model, right? We get in, we get our feet wet, we get our knees wet, we get our butt wet, and next thing you know, the whole team is swimming in the deep and doing dives and be like, "Oh man, this is the greatest thing ever," right? And so we see it, and that's one thing that I think is the most critically important piece from an enterprise manufacturer perspective. Think about direct consumer, think about distribution, eliminating channel conflict, think about consumer data and what that can do to your business. Think about a low budget, low risk, low budget, right? And then specialization. If you need recommendations on specialized folks, whether it's technology platforms, whether it's data management, whether it's anything a part of your business, Lucas, that's what we do. Please, we are here for the industry. Folks.
Exactly. It's a message. It's an email away, and don't hesitate, because again, we love doing this. So absolutely, get in touch with us.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, as we kind of wind this down here, Lucas, just want to kind of, close this out and recap. If you're an enterprise and you're a large manufacturer and you are not sure what to do, or you're trying things and they're failing, capitalize on specialized technology. Number one, specialized technology that is focused on our industry. Human capital. What you have, you don't need to go out and add a ton of human capital, right? You don't have to go add a ton of payroll, right? Just repurpose it based on the bigger picture of your needs, right? And then as you work through it, lead with conviction. You have to be convicted that we are going to have a sense, right? I think Steve Jobs says it. You can never connect the dots looking backwards, but you must lead with a sense of reason, a sense of conviction. I believe this is the right thing. You get your team together. We all feel the same way, and we are going for it. We're charging hard. And I'm going to tell you 9.5 times out of 10, you are going to succeed, because that forward first mover advantage. That development is going to put you out of the game because you've done your homework on the specialization, you've repurposed properly of your human capital, and next thing you are successful. Anything else to add there, Lucas?
No, I just love that last point you made about repurposing human capital, because by no means is this sort of implementing this technology going to take away anybody's job. This is not about we're going to put in technology, we're going to fire 10 people. That is definitely not what it's going to be about. Down the road with this technology, you're going to be hiring more people to fulfill these orders. You're going to be manufacturing more. You're going to be, so by no stretch of the imagination will you have to rehire different people in different skill sets to manage this type of program. 100% not. I'm
100%.
very, very certain that you already have the competent staff within the organization. And like Gideon says, you're just moving them from doing A, now they're going to be doing B. So that's the great part. And so nobody has to worry about their job.
100%. Well, I'll tell you what, folks. Lucas Welk, myself, Gideon Williams, we're the co-host of the Auto Trends podcast, Unleashed, Unplugged, and Unhinged. We are the voice of the industry. Please, please, please like, subscribe, share if you'd like. We are the Auto Trends podcast.
Thanks, guys.